This is the rhythm of change. This is the sound of redemption. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. Igniting the fire within you. Exalting the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise together.
Accountability starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up. Stand up, shout it loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
one way to be independent. There's only one way to be free. It's not something that someone gives to you. It's something that you take. Nobody can give you independence. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. If you can't take it, you don't deserve it. Nobody can give it to you. I'm for anybody who's for freedom. I'm for anybody who's for justice. I'm for anybody who's for equality. I'm not for anybody who tells me to sit around and wait for mine.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Eric Dawson Radio Show. I want to kind of get right to it. And I'm actually embattled in a Facebook conversation, which I might share with you guys later. But there are a couple things I want to talk about. One is certainly the presidential election. Want to talk about that. Want to talk about local elections that are coming up, what we need to continue to push forward there. I want to talk about, and I meant to talk about this yesterday, Dwayne Wade and his child, who has come out as a transgender, who Dwayne Wade fully supports. And my understanding is there's a back and forth with the biological mother with regard to the 12-year-old's decision to identify the way that she identifies. And I've got an opportunity to read several posts and comments about it. A lot of them, I got to tell you, I find to be horrific. In any event, one of the things that I'm delighted by is that, my daughter actually weighed in, and I'm trying to find the post, but my daughter weighed in on my comment congratulating Isaiah. And my daughter says, she says, all of this transphobia makes me extra glad to have an accepting dad. And, I've shared with you guys openly that, I have, daughters who, are gay, and the challenge my oldest daughter had in coming out, and the painfully emotional experience that I went through in when she did, and when I say painfully emotional, I mean that she had held it in for so very long, not knowing how I or her mom or the rest of the family was going to react. And one of the things that concerned me during that, when she did finally tell me, was that I felt that I had failed, that I didn't do an adequate enough job at supporting her in everything that she had done that gave her the level of comfort to believe that she could tell me anything. That's kind of the space that I was in when she was bawling as she was telling me that she was gay. And I think about that, and I share that experience with other folks when they tell me that they have children who are coming out. One of the other things that I saw in the post, and I can't find it, was that people talked about whether or not she now knew. And Dwayne Wade says that at 3, his child was aware that there was a gender identity issue. And he talks about how he came and said, you know, I'm not gay. I like boys, but I'm not gay. And so what it meant was that his son identified as being a woman. So a woman or a girl who likes boys, so not gay, transgender, different, right? And there are people in the thread who were commenting and saying, I'm sorry I keep looking down, but I'm trying to find that feed. There are people who were in that thread making comments saying that there's no way that the son could have known at 3 years old. And so between those kinds of comments, and there's some supportive comments in there as well, but I'm more focused on the ones that are non-supportive. So I found the feed. So and my post was simply, again, congratulations, Zaya. But there were people in the feed when I put congratulations, Zaya, that wrote things like just sad. And then somebody says, well, what's just sad? And then says, some of you black sisters condone this garbage. Have your sons around these sickos. Y'all think this is cute, but the only thing y'all distracted butts are going to doing is playing into the hands of the white supremacist agenda, and I'll bet you both are probably Christians. And then there's some other ones. And so somebody says, how is accepting your child for who they believe they are how's that protecting the white man? You can blame the white man for a lot of stuff, but this is not one of the things that you can blame him for. And they could kind of go back. And then somebody else says, at 3 years old, he does not know what he wants to be. He is a confused child. It is the parent's responsibility to teach him, but he is a boy, not a girl, not to encourage him to wear dresses. I mean, we keep having this conversation. I mean, if you guys remember, if you're long listeners of the show, you know that I've had my my cousin Corey on, and Corey actually came down from Wappingers Falls and spent time in the studio with us and unpacked for 2 hours his journey. And you know, if and I may try to tag Corey and see if I can get Corey to tune into this show and call in again, because maybe folks need a refresher. I don't believe that you choose who you are. You just are who you are. It is just your being. I didn't choose to be black. I didn't choose to be a boy, a man. I didn't choose these things. This is who I am. And I identify with this. Everything inside of me connects, right? And it says, this is who I am. There's no confusion about it, right? I'm not looking at social norms, right? Using my quote fingers, because who determines what's normal? But I connect, and so everything about me just kind of just runs, right? Like if you have a car and your car makes a sound, right? Or it's, you know, is like, you know, jumping or whatever, you know that maybe a piston or something is off and you need to go get it checked out. But if your car is running smooth, then everything is clicking, like they say, on all cylinders, and so everything is jiving. with Zaya, things weren't jibing. There was something off about who he was when he looked around and saw what society had predetermined he should be based on what he looked like on the outside. And so society said, you look like that on the outside, you must be that on the inside. And on the inside, he said, no, I'm not what you see, I'm something else. And to the degree to which that transformation from just not jibing to honing in on exactly what it was, well, if Dwayne Wade is saying that the occurrence started at 3, and so the complete conversation happened somewhere around 12, that means that there was 9 years of torment that this child endured as she worked through the dysfunction in our society, right? All of the dysfunction that would tell her that you can't be honest about who you are. She worked through all of that for that period of time. What a brave kid. What an absolutely brave kid. And I'll tell you, and I get emotional when I talk about it because, again, I go back to what my daughter Olivia must have been experiencing, and what an amazing role model she's been to my other children, because they didn't have that same issue that she had, because they saw the acceptance in the family, and they understood, and not just accept it, and to say acceptance is not the correct word either, just the normalization of what is, right? They saw that, and they were able to comfortably fall back into that comfort zone and be okay. But I remember when Olivia told me that she had something to talk to me about, and we sat by the fireplace in a chair and a half, and she buried her face in my chest and cried incessantly, soaking my shirt. And I pulled her head up and I asked her what was wrong. I thought she was hurt, like physically something was wrong. And then she looked up and tears were literally pouring from her face. You know, and she had this fearful look. And I never felt more, I don't even know the word to describe it, but to believe that your child could be that afraid of you, that you could be the person, a monster almost, that your child could be that afraid, because that was the look that I saw, that she had this fearful look and she was bawling. And she said, "Daddy, I'm gay." And I looked at her because I'm like, that's it? That's all? That's what all of this is about? And then that's when I had to take a step back to say, well, who am I? That we got to go through all of this for you to tell me that. What did I do that created such torment and fear inside of you that you had to go through all of this to tell me that? That you couldn't, while we were making cookies in the kitchen one day, or, you know, outside shooting a basketball, or on the way to take you to soccer or something, that you couldn't have just say, "Hey, Dad, you know what I just figured out?" And just have that kind of like, you know, like you talked to me about anything else. Why did it have to build up over all of these years? And you be tormented with it, wondering every day, like, how am I going to tell him? Am I going to tell him? What's he going to think? Is he going to be mad at me? And so how brave Zaya is. And certainly when I look at the comments in the feed, it just shows me what a challenging world we live in. That people just cannot be accepted for who they say they are. And it says to me that if we weren't governed by laws, the same emotion that I see and hear would probably lead people to take up stoning and burning at the stake and other kinds of things. That is the ugliness within the words that I'm reading. Hello, caller, go. Caller?
Yes, guys. It's Paul Inman. How are you?
Hey, Paul. So I'm gonna hold off, and I'm gonna get back to unless at some point, Paul, you want to even weigh in on this. I was giving a monologue about Dwayne Wade's son or daughter who realized that she was his daughter and not his son, and came out to him, and the stuff that's going on all over social media and her mother not being supportive and the comments and things like that. I was opening up the show with that. I don't know if you're aware of it. Hold on one second, Paul. Hello, caller.
Hey, good morning, Eric. Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Hello?
Yep. Hey, Paul, hold on one second. Go ahead, caller.
Okay.
No, Farrakhan, go ahead.
I didn't know if you were going to change subjects. I heard you say something about you might be changing subjects.
Well, I'll take this call, and then I'll take this call, then I'll change subjects, and then I'll get back to it.
Okay. I want to say absolutely. I think it's wrong for anybody to criticize a person for the choices they make of their personal lifestyles, especially ones in which don't harm anybody else. I think a person has a right to live their life the way they want. You know, as you already know from the previous discussions we've had about this, I don't necessarily. I think that when you say people are ridiculing someone for who they are, I think it's more. And this was the big debate when your cousin was on the show in reference to what you are as opposed to who. I don't think people are really questioning who a person is. I think the question is, you're telling me to accept what you are. You're telling me that you are a female when you are apparently physically male, or that you are male when you are you're a female when you're. I don't want to confuse myself, but just when you're claiming to be a different sex than you are. I think that's where people are having the problem. It's like, a perfect example, the lady Rachel Dozier. Right? Wasn't that her name?
My Nubian sister, Rachel Dolezal?
Dolezal, whatever her name was.
Uh-huh.
She said she was black, but she was white.
Yeah, she said
right?
I identify as black.
Right. And, for people, you're looking, you say, identifying as black, you can live any way you want to live. Right? You can dress and appear any way you want, but don't say that you are black. Just say, if you want to use the word identify, then whatever that's supposed to mean or how people interpret it, fine. But don't tell me you are a female when you are actually physically a male. That's the only problem I ever had.
Right, here's the issue, and Paul, hold on for 1 second. But here's what I want to say to you about this, right? So we've read the books now through the show, and we understand that race is just a construct, right? That white-black was just a construct by the corporation white supremacy to create a hierarchical structure. So there really is no white or black. They're just human beings.
No.
Right?
Don't say that. Don't say that we understand that, because I wouldn't agree to that. There are some medical differences between a black person and a white.
No, but there's some medical differences between what I would call fairer skinned human beings who live in different regions of the world. right? They're just based on.
Right, and so we identify them now.
Right.
We identify them based on their region and what their
oh, no
differences are.
doubt. So I'm saying, so yes.
Eskimo,
so from that
right,
region,
Eskimo isn't an
correct.
Indian,
so
right?
from
like a Native American Indian.
I got it.
Although
So
they might even look similar.
So from
right?
that,
we know that there's some physical difference there.
So from that region, yes, right. But in terms of black or white, no. But if you want to identify if you want to categorize somebody based on the region, yes, I agree with you. But I'm saying the black and white categorization is man-made, right? And it was man-made to create a hierarchical structure. We can agree to that, correct?
No, I'm not going to agree that because some kind of way you're trying to separate. So you're saying that if well, okay, perfect example, South Africa, okay, where the whites of South Africa consider themselves as African as anybody, right? But they are not the native African. They are not the South African that was there before the European came. So they're in the same region, but what you say, I'm not saying they're both South African in the same manner.
No, I agree with that too. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. But I am saying that if you have regional, geographical identifiers, that all of those make sense. The thing that was imposed by white imperialists was a race structure outside of just the human race, which said black or white. And how do we know that to be true? Because at one point, Italians were not considered white, right? At one point, you had Irish were not considered white, but now they are considered white. And so when you
that's a misunderstanding. They were never not considered white. Okay, Italians were never not considered white. They were considered a lower class white.
No, that's not true.
Okay, they were considered a despised white group of people because of the imperialists of England, right, and the imperialists of other. But Italians are Romans. We were Romans never considered white. Tell me.
Right.
William Caesar never considered a white man.
So what I'll do, because I don't want to belabor it, I'll put because I always proof up, right? So I will put the data in the feed that shows that white and black was a man-made construct, right? In order to create classes and a caste system. Right? Has nothing to do with biology. If you want to talk about physical features based on different regions, meaning that if you live in a warmer, thick-air climate, you have a broader nose with wider nostrils so that your lungs could take in more oxygen, or if you live in a colder region, your nose is thinner so that it protects your lungs, so you're taking in less oxygen. Those are things that happen to the human body as a result of us. What is the word I'm looking for? Evolving, right? That is a result of evolution and the region that you lived in, right? So, but the race thing is completely man-made. Now, like I said, we disagree on it, but I'll put my data in the feed. And so based on the data that I'm going to put in the feed and understanding that race is man-made, if black and white were man-made, it is based on a more on an experience. And if she says, I've experienced these things, thus I'm identifying with this, then I say, okay.
What you're saying is that a person can identify to be anything. If that's the case, and I posed this question before, when we look at a person who believes that they are one of the Star Trek characters from the planet Vulcan, right? And they say, I'm right, and they go and they get the same medical prosthetic procedures to pinch their ears and to change their fingers, and they start talking a different way, do we say that they are actually a Vulcan? now that they've corrected their physical feature, that they can look like a Vulcan, are they a Vulcan?
So,
or are they not a human being who identifies as a Vulcan?
No. So right. So to move to that far extreme, what I'll give you better example is this. There is at least one man that I saw. There may be many more. There's a guy who has implanted whiskers in his face. He has implanted the teeth.
Pause. You heard what you just said?
Would you not? Would you? Farrakhan, let's.
So you're not going to acknowledge him to be whatever kind of animal you're telling me that he is.
Farrakhan, please allow me to finish what I'm saying.
Okay.
So he's implanted these whiskers. He's implanted teeth. He's also I don't know exactly how he now has these stripes that represent a tiger. What he has said is this. He said, I identify as that animal. And then what he did is what human beings do when they identify, right? They go through a physical transformation so that the outside now equals what's on the inside. And so what he did...
But look at what you're saying, though, Eric. Look at what you're saying. You're still calling him a he. You're not calling him an animal.
No. But understand why I'm doing that. But Farrakhan, I'm only doing it for the purposes. So please don't get caught up on that, because I'm literally just doing that for the Listen to me. I'm literally doing that for the purpose.
But Eric, what you're missing is you understand that, and the word is that's key, is identify.
No, but listen.
He identifies as a type, right? That's fine. Nobody's questioning that. I'm not questioning when somebody says a boy identifies as a girl.
Right.
What I'm saying is that the boy can identify any way they want, but it does not make them a girl. And I am saying to you that this man can identify as a tiger, but it does not make him a type.
Right. So I don't. What I'm gonna say is this. In that respect, you know what? I will concede that. But my point to you is this: that in his case, I recognize and allow him the comfort of saying that that's who he believes that he is. In the realm of humans, right? If somebody says that they identify, and I guess that was a wrong example for me to give you, but in the realm, so let's stay in the realm of human beings, right? So one of them, I guess, was about had to do with me being respectful, right? And the other one, so
I believe you got to be respectful.
No, right. So the one I was giving you about him was about being respectful. Back to the human being, this is about constructs, right? So and being respectful, right? So the overlay is, I think you should be respectful in both. But one, yes, is not a physical thing, but maybe a psychological thing. The other one, I believe, is a physical thing. And I think, and this is the human being, because I think that you just have human beings. I think that gender, we talked about this before too. I think that gender is a construct, right? Boy, girl, right, is a construct. I don't think it's biological. If you were to take blood, if you were to, from a male or a female.
Don't say that. You get yourself in trouble.
No, go ahead.
If you take blood from a male or you take blood from a female, you can determine the type of chromosomes they have. No. And that would tell you whether they are male or female.
No, listen now. Listen to me very carefully, because you have, understand now, you have, and we're talking about this now in sports, within transgender sports, you have those who are testing higher based on blood and other kinds of things, more as male than female, right? And based on what our construct is. And so they want to move them out of participating in female sports and moved them over into male sports, and there's been no medical intervention. So no, I'm not being careful. I'm being very specific about what it is that I'm saying. And so if those things occur, if we have occurrences of those things in human beings, who is to determine then, right, that this person, just a person, whatever is on the inside, whatever they are feeling, where they're saying there is not a connection between what you see on the outside and what they're experiencing on the inside, that there's no connection, and all they're doing is seeking to unify those two things.
I got you. But the only thing I'll say to that is, and again, this goes back to the previous conversation, what male knows what a female feels like, and what female knows what a male. I don't know what a girl.
Right, and you know what, and what a
that is a very popular.
And what an amazing thing for you. But here's the thing.
I feel like the other step.
But here's the thing. What an amazing thing for you not to have ever had to go through something like that. Right? So you never, so from birth, you were connected. Everything for you was connected. Right? And so when you say, I don't know what it feels like, well, but the people who do, right, at the age of 2 and at the age of 3 and at the age of 4, when they're living in a society where they don't know how to express that without being ridiculed, at the age of 6 and 7 and for Zaya, 8, 9, 10, before she was able to connect it and then felt the level of comfort to be able to go share it with her dad. So I'm saying, thank God that you didn't have to experience that. That's a wonderful thing. What a horrible thing for somebody to have to go through that and to live in a society that we live in. So no, I didn't have to experience that either. I don't know what it feels like to be a girl on the inside. Everything connected for me. And for most of us, probably. But there are some who it doesn't connect for. And so where I was going with this was outside of this, right? Outside of society creating the level of discomfort, for her own mother not to give her a safe place to land as she is going through this, I think is...
I heard you say that. The mother is... I thought they were all down with you. I thought...
There was a piece that I read where, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but a piece that I read where the mother is not on board with this.
Oh, okay. I thought she was, but either way, like I didn't get into the story. I keep hearing everybody talk about it, and I just feel like, for me as a parent, I think a child, I don't know, I would. This is like the which age, so I'm not gonna say if my child came out that way to me that I would force them to live a certain way. I'd probably try to work with them, but as a parent, I would guide to what I believe is correct. And if that didn't work for them in the end, then they can go about whatever as they get to being an adult. But I do believe that at 12 years old, the same way my kid can't tell me what time he's coming in the house or what time she's coming in the house, the same way my kid just can't tell me that, no, Dad, I know you thought you had a son, but you actually got a daughter. I don't think that I would, I wouldn't embrace that as okay, I'm going to live like that. I would probably try to communicate with my child to conduct himself as a male. And then say, hey, man, when you get 18, do that as one. I can't stop you.
So in between that time, I just think about this for a second, right? So in between that time, so whatever time, so based on that, your child might not ever communicate to you because you may project to your child through readings or comments about other things that's just not acceptable. And so your child might have to live tormented for his or her entire childhood life until such time that they were 18 years old or 19 and were emancipated. And so,
listen,
And
I
so,
call me a harmless parenting because I guess I'm going to torture my kids for that 18 years.
and so
For
the
18 years, you're going to run it that way. With me, you're going to run it that way.
and so
Now,
the,
like I said, at 18, when I don't have to take care of you, or that's not my direct responsibility or concern, I don't care how you choose to do that, kid. I'll love you and I'll respect you. But until then,
but
you will do it in
but
a
wait a
manner
minute,
in
but
which
wait a minute,
I
but
accept.
wait a minute. But now we have to. But when you say I love and I respect you, I want you to understand. When I love and I respect you seems to run contrary to, right? What you just said, because if the child doesn't feel that he or she could come and have an honest conversation and be seen for who he or she really is, where then, so the love and respect is conditional upon an agreement that that child sees things the way that the parent sees it. Because if you don't, then there really is no respect. And then I'm trying to understand how the love is expressed.
I mean, we can get into the back and forth of
Well,
whether it's
but I'm
respect or
saying,
acceptance,
but it's a
whatever.
very,
and I can go with that. I'm just going to say for me as a parent, right, that, okay, during the point in time in which society says, I am responsible to guide my child. I am responsible to take care of my child, okay? And I'm going to do that in the manner in which I believe to be correct. And anything that I do not think is correct is not something I would involve my child in. And I'm not going to, me, myself, involve my child in a gender-changing lifestyle prior to that. Now, again, and I might understand that they're going that route. Let's be clear. If they come to me at 12 and say this to me, I'm going to be like, listen, when you get 18, if this is the way you choose to live, you can choose to live it. But for now, you must live this manner.
So,
amongst
all right. I don't want to belabor it, but
and the only other thing I could say to that child, and I'll be honest with you, the only other thing I could say to them is if I really feel like loving them and respecting them enough, there was a member of my family that I loved and respected and that wanted to allow them to be a certain way, to change gender, like my mother or something, then I might say, okay, Mom, they'll have to be raised with you. I mean, I'll do my financial part or whatever, but because it's not going to happen in my house.
Got it.
That's the only conceding I could do. It won't happen in my house.
Got it.
Right? If there was another one that I respect, like I said, if my mother said, hey, I'll take my grandbaby, no matter what, and let him be whomever, then okay. All right, Mom, you can get that. I ain't going to fight with my mother because I ain't going to win that one. Right? But other than that, I couldn't see it because in my house they just would.
All right. Thanks for the call.
So I'm going to sit back and listen to the rest of the show.
All right. Appreciate it. Brother Emin, are you still there? I think I lost Brother Emin. I'm going to see if I can get him back on the line. So hold on, guys. Let's see if I can get him back on. And give me 1 second.
Hello.
Brother Inman.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
All right, I got you back on the line. So this is Paul Inman. He is, what ward are you in Irvington?
The East Ward.
So he is a councilman in the East Ward in the township of Irvington. And you're running for re-election?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, how many terms have you served so far, Paul?
I served 2 terms already.
Okay.
This will be my 3rd term.
Okay. And in your previous 2 terms, did you run on the mayor's ticket? Did you run with the mayor?
Well, I was endorsed by the mayor the last 2 times. Yes.
Okay, so you were endorsed by Mayor Tony Voss the last 2 times, and
Correct.
And running this time, are you expecting to be endorsed by the mayor?
No, I'm not. Actually, he chose to endorse someone else.
Okay.
for council. So no, I'm not going to get his endorsement, and that's okay.
Okay. So do you know why? Did you have a sit down? Because I always find it interesting when you have a slate of candidates. Well, firstly, I'm going to say this. I'm never really. I'm not a fan. I understand the need for it, but I'm not a fan of slates because I think that slates imply that there's going to be this kind of homogenous or monolithic thinking, right? This group think that people are not going to be independent because there's a commingling of funds and there are these endorsements, and so there's at least a thought that somewhere behind the curtain there was an agreement that they were going to move in one direction without any challenges. So do you believe that because now you're not running on his ticket, so I got to ask this question: do you think that there may have been a thought that because he endorsed you that there would not be any dissenting views about things if he wanted to do things a certain way, that you were just going to do them because he endorsed you?
Absolutely. I think he thought that I was going to be a rubber stamp on some of his questionable policies and procedures. And, through the years, as I reminded him that, I represent the residents in my ward and in my community. And as a taxpayer, as a homeowner, and as a father, I have to do what's right and what's best for my family as well as the residents that I represent. So we butt heads about a number of issues, but I believe those issues was the issues that mattered, and it was things that I ran on. So I told people I was going to fight for certain things, and I couldn't, my word is my bond, so I couldn't not continue to do the things that I said I was going to do and expect the residents to still support me. So we had a falling out for a number of reasons.
Okay. And so are you at liberty to talk about any of the questionable things that you wouldn't be in support of, that the mayor wanted you to be in support of?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So, for one, there were, we ran on trying to limit wasteful spending, and the first issue was that the mayor started to hire, political folks who were part of the Democratic Party in Essex County. And, it was my belief that, it's still my belief is that we have educated people that live, that are residents in Irvington, and those residents should have been given the opportunity to serve in those positions first, because they live here. They're taxpayers, they went to school, they got the education, and they should have been afforded those positions before we look outside of Irvington to give these positions to. So that was number one. And, one other big thing that we butt heads about was that the mayor is hiring special police officers. Special police officers, basically, if they're friends of the, folks, family and friends, some of them are friends of folks that's part of the Democratic Party or made donations, becoming these special police officers, and they're paying them close to $60,000. And my problem was that when a police recruit comes out of the police academy, they're getting paid anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000. There's no way that we can justify hiring special police officers who are political friends and giving them $60,000 when we can't do that for the men and women that not only live in our town but just coming out of the police academy. I thought that sent the wrong message. And then the other thing was the mayor started hiring part-time firemen. Now, and that, let me just say, that's the first. This would be the first community in the state of New Jersey hiring part-time firemen. And when the part-time firemen came on, I was vocal about that because I thought that it put our residents in our community at greater risk. Because, you can go to the academy, but when you come out of the academy, you're on hands-on training, especially with the firemen. So with hiring part-time firemen, these folks was only working, let's say, 1 day a week. And working 1 day a week, you can't get that proper training with, the current firemen to learn, what the do's and the don'ts in the actual fire.
So what is the purpose for him wanting to hire part-time firemen? I mean, is there a budget issue that he's trying to address?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that. What it basically was is that the mayor was trying to use that as leverage to get the fire union to reopen their contract. They settled the contract, they agreed to certain terms, and in the middle of that contract, the mayor wanted to reopen it and negotiate again. And when the fire union wouldn't, this was a tactic that they used. Even the state a president of the fire union called it as a bullying and intimidation tactics that the mayor was trying to use to force the firefighters to open up their contract. It was just a wrong message. Not only did it was wrong for the firemen, but it was wrong for putting the lives of our residents at risk by hiring these folks as part-time.
Wow. So in terms of the job that because I want to get on now to the job that you've done. Right, so you're running for a third term. What is it, and I'm a term limit guy. So what is it that that you believe you've done that warrants a third term for you to continue work in Irvington as a councilman in East Ward?
Well, I think the number one thing is that, and I agree with you as far as the term limits, but currently, I've been the only councilman who have been speaking out on various issues that has been happening, and I believe we need someone that is going to hold their feet to the fire when they're doing things wrong. And being the only one that is speaking out for issues that matters, it could be easy for me just to be a rubber stamp along with everybody else and go along, but then there's no one fighting for the residents, and things are just going to continue to get outrageous. But when you have someone that could speak up and speak out and fight for the issues that matter to us, you need someone to continue to be there so that way it's checks and balances. Now listen, if the town was running great, and there were more transparency, and the town the mayor wasn't hiring just continue to hire these political folks around the county, then I wouldn't need to be there. If they were concentrating on cleaning our streets, if they were concentrating on making a police presence in our community, I wouldn't have to be there. But issue after issue, I always have to put their feet to the fire and call them on the issues that matters. Like, when I found out that in my ward at night, we had 3 police vehicles to monitor crime in our ward. That was a problem. And it was only because when I brung it out and made us think about it that we were able to get more of a police presence in our ward at night. So when residents was calling the police department, they would tell them that, we don't have a car available. That's not acceptable. Or when, our ambulance provider who's supposed to respond in 6 minutes, and who were responding in 30 minutes to an hour, that was a problem. And the mayor and his administration was supposed to be monitoring what type of response time that they were doing, and they wasn't. So when I started doing the research and start pointing these things out when residents were calling, I would start doing the research and start, asking the tough questions. Say, hey, look, are we checking the response time? Are we holding them to the contractor responsibility? And the answer was no, they wasn't. So I've been fighting for issues, that matter, and standing up for people who who can't really speak up and speak out, and we talk about the teachers in our town, in our school district. Last night, I was at the school board meeting in Irvington, and rallying with the teachers who've been out of a contract and been fighting to get a fair contract. And we had a good rally last night where we had over 300 teachers come out rallying, asking the board and the superintendent to give them a fair contract, stop the delays, take the politics out of this, and give them a fair contract. So I continue to fight for issues and for people in our community, the things that matter. And I think I've had a track record where people can go to and say, whenever we call Councilman Inman, he always have our back. He always fights for us. And I want to continue to do that. And that's why I'm running for re-election.
All right, listen, I've started looking more and more into what's going on in Irvington. As you know, and as the listeners and viewers of the show know, I am running for a congressional seat here in the 10th Congressional District, which includes Irvington, right? Because I think that on a lot of the issues that that are impacting residents in the 10th Congressional District, many of those issues are some of the ones that you just talked about. The congressman is silent on those issues because he relies on that same political machinery to pull out votes for him during election time. So he's not an advocate for those folks who who feel as though they have the heel of establishment on their necks. But with regard to all of these things, Councilman, I've connected with Destin Nichols, who's also running for councilman, because I've gotten an array of documents from various people who are residents in Irvington. They say, Eric, you won't believe how bad Irvington is. You won't believe some of the corruption that is taking place in Irvington. You won't believe the no-show jobs that are there in Irvington. And I'm currently perusing a document that lists the current business administrator as being on a board. And I believe I got to go and look at it again, but I believe the salary is close to $100,000 a year, and that this particular individual, they don't have any meetings. They don't, whatever this board is, they don't hold any meetings. That the particular resident who gave me this information did an Oprah request to try to pull that information. And it came back from the clerk's office that no meetings have ever been held. And so she's trying to find out, and she's been to council meetings to find out why the business administrator is collecting $100,000 on this particular board. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I'm going to send you that information. I'm also sending it to Mr. Nichols because I think that folks who are running for the council, and certainly you are a member of the council right now, should be aware of that document and should be able to provide some information to that resident.
And you're right. Eric, I want you to know too what we've done. We've been putting a package together as well for the last couple of years. We did it, but we just did it again, where we're sitting the Attorney General, and we put an Attorney General's on notice that he has to start investigating this type of corruption. We've pointed out that there's a lot of no-show jobs, and in our last correspondence, we're letting them know that, listen, if you don't want to take the time to sit with us, we're going to actually start sending these packages out to the media and start forcing their hand, because we have a Democratic governor. Everybody want to sit on the sidelines, including...
Well, and so that's part of the challenge, isn't it now? Because that same Democratic governor is the governor that walked through Irvington with the mayor when he was running for election. And so you got to question whether or not that governor because he's going to run for re-election and he's going to want to get some of those same votes, whether he wants to make enemies with the guy who's running for mayor. So this incestuous thing that's taking place within the Democratic Party, Councilman, is part of the reason why none of these issues get addressed.
Hey, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Because, it was just mind-boggling to me when I sent these correspondence to, our assembly folks, two of our assembly people that represents Irvington, and also our Senator Rice. And the only person that actually responded and said that they received the package was Senator Rice. I haven't heard from the assembly folks. We've asked for our state legislators to call on having an independent audit of Irvington's finances, so that way they can see the different corruptions that we can point out. And they have been silent. So we like I said, we're sending that packet to another packet to the Attorney General's office, demanding that he said that he wanted to fight corruption. So now it's time to put, to stand up to what he said, what he promised, and we put a list of things together, and we're hoping that he'll take that fight on.
Yeah, so, I'll just give you a sense, and I'm going to post this document because it is a Public Information Act document. But here's the thing that I'm talking about, and I'm gonna redact the names. But it says, pursuant to your most recent Open Public Record Act request, please see the information below. The names of the rent leveling board officer administrator. Now, this is the business administrator. I believe he still is, Musa Malik.
Yes. Yep.
Right. The names of the members of the rent leveling board, and do they receive a stipend? That's what she wanted to know. That's what this particular resident wanted to know. And excuse me. And it lists Council President David Lyons. It lists Council Member Renee Burgess, Council Member Sandra R. Jones, Council Member Dr. October Hudley, Council Member Fred. You got to pronounce the first name for me. Charnett Frederick. Council Member Vern Cox. Right, so it lists these people. It says, please note that none of the board members receive. Oh, your name is on here too. It says none of them receive compensation or stipend. Right. It says salaries previously and currently for Musa Malik for activities, employment for the rent leveling board. Mayor Tony Voss, no record exists. And it says for Musa Malik, his stipend received in 2016 was $50,000, 2017 $30,000, 2018 $30,000, and 2019 that he received $30,000. So none of the board members receive a stipend, but Musa Malik receives a stipend. And then in the Oprah request, it was also asked, it says the number of cases the rent leveling board has processed since July 1st, 2014. And then it says in July 2014, no records exist. And in 24 cases in 15, 20, 42 and 16, 37 and 17, 23 and 18. And then it goes further to ask the question. It says, this is a response to open information dated April 24, 2019, related to the records of the Office of the Municipal Clerk. It says, there are no transcripts in the town's clerk's office of any rent leveling board meetings for the time periods that were mentioned that Musa Malik received stipends. Regarding the council members' attendance at rent leveling board meetings, the township clerk's office has no record of this. So what this particular resident was trying to find out, and I want to try to find this out, and I'd love to get a packet if you're willing to send me one that you sent to the other individuals so that I could peruse that as well. But it just got me curious as to wondering, what the stipend that Musa Malik would have received, 50,000, 30,000, 30,000. I mean, I think that totals somewhere around $140,000, $150,000 in taxpayer money for what?
No, absolutely. And I want to be clear. I was the only council person that actually responded to that resident in writing, letting her know that I never attended any of these meetings. So any of these cases that the business administrator has said that there were cases on, and all of the council members were members of this committee. So, I was the only one that actually put it in writing and also sent that my letter along with that particular finding to the Attorney General as well. That's the problem, that the business administrator who sends out a letter to one of our residents to say that he received a stipend for these cases, and these council members was part of the process. That was wrong. That was incorrect. So I would like to see those cases that actually occurred. That's the thing. Since he pointed out there was a number of cases that was there, well, produce the information, produce the records, and that's what we've been asking for. But not only has the issue with stipends is a huge problem, because the mayor was getting a stipend. He was getting stipends for being the acting director of the fire department. That was a problem. I spoke up for that. I also had a problem with a number of people in his administration getting stipends, because, especially the business administrator, because he took the job to run the day-to-day operation, and that just stopped for 8 hours. He has to constantly be available and run the day-to-day operation. So he's going to have to juggle many hats, and he shouldn't be paid anything additional for doing his job, because he agreed to help run a day-to-day operation for X salary. So he shouldn't be rewarded with other funds.
So what you're saying is somewhere within that 8 hours, he's taking off his business administrator hat and he's putting on another hat, but it's still within that 8 hours, and he's parsing that time, and then he wants to charge the taxpayer. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, and that's a problem. That is a problem. Why are we paying this individual 2 salaries to do the one job that he was hired for? If that was the case, and if it's definitely needed, why not hire a resident who is capable, who has the experience, and give them the opportunity to do that job? Why is the business administrator getting paid several thousands of dollars to do more than one job in the same time frame? That's the problem.
Yeah, and then one other question I want to ask you, Councilman, since I have you on the phone, and you know my late dad, and
sure,
you know
absolutely.
that he used to be a partner with the late Bilal Beasley and with Fahim Raouf in ownership of 660 Stuyvesant Avenue.
Yes.
My understanding is that, and I think I saw it when I drove past there, is that the planning board or some entity of the city is actually leasing space in that building, the first floor, if I'm not mistaken. And then in addition to that, the mayor is part owner of that building and has his office on the second floor. Are you aware of that?
That was one of the things also, Eric, that we sent to the Attorney General's office as well. Listen.
So am I accurate about that? I mean, tell me that's not so.
Well, they are renting space. I'm not sure if the mayor is part owner, but he does have a political office in that building, and that's a problem. What they're doing is they're taking taxpayer dollars, they're renting space out of that building, paying them $30,000 a year to rent office space, which I believe that they can find the office space in a municipal building that we have. We shouldn't have to pay additional fees to use outside office space. And if that was the case, Eric, let's get them the benefit of the doubt. If that was the case, the part owner of that building is Irvington CFO. He's also, he had a / CFO and also the finance director. You can't have the finance director in turn writing his own self a check. And not only that, you also have the Democratic chairperson, Irvington Democratic chairperson,
is part owner.
Is part owner. Not only has an office in the building as well. That's a problem. They're sending the wrong message.
Wait a minute. So you got the Democratic chairperson, you got the CFO, you've got the mayor. They all have offices in there. Then you've got the CFO and Democratic chairperson who are part owners of the property. And then you've got them renting that property to the municipality. And now let me ask you, so this is the other thing that I understand. Whatever the rent is, they adjusted it below whatever that amount is that would have to be voted on and approved by the council. Is that correct?
Well, what they do? No. The council did vote on it. What it is I was the only council.
Oh no. I'm sorry, not approve it. That they came below whatever the threshold
the bid
is.
Threshold.
The
Correct.
bid threshold. There you go. I'm sorry. That's right. That they came below the bid threshold.
Yeah. So which basically means is that they could act, since it was below the bid threshold. They can get anyone to submit a proposal, and long as it's under that bid threshold, they don't have to request proposals from other, let's say, landlords who have office space in Irvington to rent office space from them. That they can go to anyone as long as it's under that number and get them, go into a particular contract. Now they did bring it before the council. I'm the only council candidate, and again, this is why they have a problem with me, that spoke out against it, because I felt as though that, one, it was a conflict of interest to have our director of finance who owns a building and to have our mayor who has a political office in the building to rent space out of that. That's a problem. So in fact, and this is what I challenged them with, was in fact, if we do need the office space, why not use a different building owned by somebody totally different, that it won't look like we are rewarding people who is being loyal to our campaign or part of our political team, that rewarding people for that. I mean, we shouldn't be doing that. Spending taxpayers' money for that. That's wrong.
So the CFO is getting paid through taxpayer money for renting the space. The chair, did you say the chairman of the Democratic committee?
The Democratic chairperson.
The
Of the
Democratic chairperson
Party
is getting paid, and not only is the Democratic chairperson getting paid, but if I'm not mistaken, the relative of Democratic chairperson is now a member of the city council.
Oh well, yes, her daughter's the city council.
I mean, come on. Let's take this. Wait, hold on, because I'm getting dizzy. Let's take this phone call. Hello, caller, go.
Hey, is Paul still on the phone? I might be on a delay.
Listen, Mike, I appreciate you calling, man, because I'm getting dizzy.
No. That's that's spin. That's the Irvington spin. He's actually telling. Paul knows that me. I've been vocal for too many years, except for these last couple of years. I had to take a break too much because when you talk about ambulance response times and part-time police and these different issues, and people in the town get mad at me when I say Team Irvington is defeating you on quality of life issues. This is what I'm talking. He's clearly in plain language telling you how the residents and homeowners are being defeated by a team that's so insulated from the outside that they can't penetrate these dangerous conditions that's in that town.
Right.
Thank you, Paul, for standing up. That's all I want to say.
Okay, so here's a question I want to ask you, because both of you guys, listen,
okay.
like I said to you before, part of the reason why I've decided to challenge the congressman is because I think that when you have a platform like that, you have to use it, right? and he doesn't, right? What he does is he takes advantage of the community and he collects $200,000 salary and he does nothing. So when you have all these kinds of things, you should be able to go and you should be able to have a conversation with somebody who has the leverage to be able to try to correct what's wrong. And that's not what he's doing. What I'd like to be able to do with you guys, and I already talked to Dustin Nichols, is set up within the township of Irvington a series of meetings if we can. And I want to try to leverage, and I already have one set up with a and you guys probably know the woman, and she's gonna, she's agreed to have an online session. Her name is Eloise McDaniel. Right, so
fiery lady, fiery.
Yeah, 80 years old, man. Yeah, 80 years old.
And,
but go ahead.
Yeah, full disclosure. When I first moved to the town, she stood up for me and wrote letters and spoke on the issues that I was fighting for. That was one of the first ladies in the town that spoke up and wrote letters and took on the fight. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's agreed to pull together a handful of residents, and we're going to actually broadcast almost not really a town hall, but just a discussion, right? And we're going to start to lay out some of the issues that are taking place, what residents are saying, and what I would invite you guys to do is be a part of that, right? Of identifying people within the community who have had enough, who want to speak out. And I'm willing to use this platform, this technology, to be able to push that information out so that a larger group of people can see it. But we have to start to do that. We have to start to to identify these things that are in that packet that you sent out, Paul, because we know that those people who you sent them to, the majority of them are part of the broken system that we're trying to fix, right? So sending it to them is like pissing in the wind, and it just is. I mean, I know you have to do it as part of protocol, but I'm sure that when you sent it out, you already knew that you weren't going to get a response, right? And so the idea is to have a mechanism, to have a platform to be able to go around them and to be able to reach the people that you need to reach to be able to start to push back and effectuate change. And I want to let you know that I'm willing to partner with you guys and use this platform to be able to reach a large number of people in the township of Irvington so that we can make them aware of all of these things that are going on. I mean, that is just grotesque that you have the CFO and you have the mayor and you have the Democratic chairperson, all tied into this building, and that they surreptitiously went below the no bid threshold simply so that they could make sure that they guide this this contract to that particular building, right? I mean, I just think that just enough is enough.
No, absolutely. And I'm willing to work with you to do that. I have several community meetings coming up, and we'll make sure that we get you the information so that way we can definitely let the residents know what's going on and have those conversations. And I knew those our current elected officials wasn't going to respond, but I would just want to be on record that I can always say, and they cannot deny this, that not only did I send them the packet, I also followed up. Especially with our congressman, I followed up with the meeting. I also followed up with the meeting with our senator. So those folks can't say that they didn't know, because Councilman Inman reached out through mail and also through a meeting asking for them to get involved, get in this fight, because these issues really matter to the residents.
They do matter, man. I mean, but when you look at the median income in the township of Irvington, those folks can't afford to pay $30,000 for an office space that may not be needed, that may not be necessary, or certainly if it is necessary, like you said, hey, if you put it out for bid, maybe you get something less.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
so what we do know is that they weren't, at the very least, they weren't interested in trying to find the absolute best deal they could for the residents of Irvington, and that they all colluded. They all got together and conspired to do this. That is the thing that is most disgusting. You know, and I appreciate the fact that you, councilman, that you stood up against it, that you saw that there was something wrong with that you feel and hear the pain of the residents in the township of Irvington, and that you said that, you know, they elected you to stand up and advocate on their behalf. But for the rest of them, who simply wanted to be on a team so that they could collect a salary and feel important because they have a title, it's disgusting. You know, and I want other people to understand it. So when we talk nationally, and we're going to get into the debate, I'm going to spend some time talking about that when I'm off the phone with the councilman. But when we want to talk about the level of corruption that takes place in Washington, or we want to talk about the level of corruption that takes place in Trenton, look at what's taking place in your own backyard. Now, we've spent time over the last couple of years talking about what takes place in Newark, because Newark is the largest city in the state of New Jersey. But bordering it, you have Irvington, you have East Orange, right? You got Orange. Those towns have issues. You've got the feds crawling through Orange. You've got the mayor and the folks in East Orange silent about what's going on there. And then what you're hearing about what's going on in Irvington, and we know what's happening in Newark.
Yeah, but if there's no one there to, you know what I mean, take away their plausible deniability, that's what they're doing here today. Is, you know, they can maneuver in these ways with the cloak of, well, I didn't know. No. They know. They know more than they're telling you, but they hide behind plausible deniability here, you know. And if you got to send, when you send that letter out stating that no, they're aware of what is going on, then you know what I mean. It's a different story. But I'm glad, guys. I'll be glad to partner with anybody who wants to better the quality of life. This is what it's all about. When we have this unnecessary spending to put in people's pocket so that they can live high off the hog, and we're down here in the mud. It's you know what I mean. This is your quality of life. But just let me know when the meetings are. I'll be glad to be there, and I'll bring as many people as I can.
Excellent. Thank you. Call or go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, this is Eric Dixon on the line. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well, so I'm listening to the show. I'm very enthused about it. There's a lot of factual information being given out by our beloved little town in Irvington. I'd like to thank the councilman for, having the cojones to stand up against this team, or so-called team, that has been running roughshod over the election process in Irvington for well over 30 years. And all of the conversation that's being had about the collusion and then about this town being run by a few of the same people, and how the team and how the Irvington Democratic Committee has been in collusion forever, over these people in this town, and how the township has not moved forward in over 30 years. And the only thing that we can gather is to be able to give Team Irvington the credit for that.
Now, wait a minute.
And again, I want to thank the councilman for stepping up.
Eric, I have to give full disclosure, right? Because my dad, the late Carl Sharif, was beloved friends with the late Bilal Beasley.
Mm-hmm.
And they sat and talked about Team Irvington. And they talked about how to try to seize economic and political power from the county, right? And how to start to build something for black people. And I'm telling you, my father's rolling over in his grave right now at what's happening up there in Irvington. And it's breaking my heart because I sat in those meetings and I listened to those conversations. And I listened to folks like Tony Voss when he came and said that he wanted to make a difference, that he wanted to be a fighter for the people. And to hear the things that the councilman is saying, and to have the documents, and some of them I can't even read right now because we're working on getting them verified. And I want folks to also know that people sent me audio files that I'm trying to get verified. So there's a lot of stuff. And so, to be up there and then so again, for me, to have a congressman that if you called him, he would have his tail between his legs because of what he seeks to gain from that political party there in Irvington in terms of foot soldiers and money as he runs for another term in Congress. It's shameful.
Exactly.
It's shameful.
Well, the fact of the matter is, Eric, is that for that 30 years, the Irvington Democratic Committee, with the help and through the auspices of Team Irvington, has seized total control over all of the vital processes of the town. And let me explain. They control housing, every housing appointment, every housing job, and its budget. They control the school district, every school district job, and its very sizable budget. They control every job in town hall and its budget, including the mayor's office, through the Irvington Democratic Committee and Team Irvington, whatever version that you want to bring up. Is Team Irvington and Team Irvington Strong. But they're the same people with the same agenda. And that agenda is really, in my opinion, looking over the progress that Irvington has enjoyed over the last 30 years, it's just abysmal. You know, everybody on Team Irvington drives a new car. Everybody on Team Irvington has a nice place to live in Irvington. Everybody in Team Irvington is making $70,000, $80,000 a year for no show jobs and opportunities that the township residents could have. How can you have 3 or 4 jobs and they're all full-time jobs? And then you walk home at the end of the year with $200,000 in your pocket, but the person who's been paying taxes in the township for 50 years can't even go to the council meeting and raise a question about it. It's sad. It's almost like looking at the national picture where President Trump wants to put himself as a king over everybody, and that's what I call it. I call it the imperial mayorship. Our township is run under the Faulkner Act. The Faulkner Act gives you the ability to have a strong mayor and a strong council. Irvington operates under the strong council, and in that, there are 2 variations therein. You can either have the mayor run everything, or you can have the township and the council run everything. I suggest that we move towards having a council make the decisions in the township to take some of that power or autocratic power out of the hands of the mayors, that all of them in Orange and East Orange and Irvington and Newark alike, because it's just a lot of power to wield for one person, and then they don't have the ability to be able to evenly and be dispassionate about the resources of the township and how the township could move forward at the same time. And it is sad. It is grotesque. And that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah. Well, again, any resident in the township of Irvington who has any information that you'd like to share so that we can get to the bottom of all of the corruption and collusion that's going on there, you can feel free to inbox me. If you need me to be confidential with the information, we'll do that. As long as I can verify it to be factual, we'll put it out. But we need to expose them. You know, this reminds me of a couple years ago. And again, just full disclosure, right? You know, I didn't support Tony Voss when he ran for election. I supported John Sowell, who was running against him. And then when Tony Voss won, there were some things that he had began to work on that I thought were pretty impressive. And I actually invited him on the show, and he brought in all of his directors, and they were talking about all the great things that they were doing. And then I said to him, I said, well, you know what? As long as you're doing great things, that's fantastic. I said, but I want you to be here when when things are not so great, when there's controversy, when there are questions and transparency needed. And that didn't happen. And then following that, I remember the mayor applied for and was getting ready to receive a job in Hillside as the director of DPW. I went to my Facebook page and I posted that and said what a horrible thing that was to do. I actually got a phone call from the mayor asking me why didn't I contact him before I put that on my page. And I said, I don't think I report. Yeah, I said, I don't think I report to you. And the pressure of the people who were commenting and the fact that it made it into NJ.com, and I think it also made it into one of the other local news organizations, he withdrew from that position. So we need to apply that same kind of pressure, guys. So it's doable. right? Because because it happened there. He was getting ready to do that. He got outed about it, and he withdrew. So if we apply the appropriate amount of pressure on these various issues that Councilman Inman is referring to, we can get him to withdraw from them. And I think not only that, but we need to hang this albatross, hang this around the necks of the other council people like an albatross and say, how dare you support something like this? That's not why you were elected. Like you said, Eric, it's a Faulkner Act. You weren't elected to be a rubber stamp of the mayor. You were elected to represent those people in the districts or wards that you were elected in. And if you can't do that job and you want to do the mayor's job, then God damn it, run for mayor.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, thank you for the platform, Eric. We will be talking with you vigorously over the next little while. And again, Paul, God bless you. Thank you for standing up, bro. I might have to leave the call.
All right, thanks,
man.
Brother.
Thank you.
Brother Paul, Edmund. You seem to have a big task there in Irvington, man. But listen, I'm committed, to do what I can do to help shine a light on all of this stuff, and to help organize and mobilize those residents in the township of Irvington, and to identify not just you and Destin, but any other person who's seeking office who wants to really be a black voice for black people and who wants to serve the community. And not be self-serving. I'm interested in partnering with you in any way that I can and leveraging this platform and the informed class to wage war against those folks who are unjustly treating the residents there in Irvington.
I appreciate that because we need folks like yourself to get in the fight for the folks that feel like they have to be silent because of fear or intimidation that the mayor will do to them and their family. So I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to the partnership, and I'll continue to give you information of things that are happening that is just wrong.
Yeah, I would love to, and we'll talk off air, and we talked about this yesterday, right? So I would love to, just kind of have like an update. So if we could figure out one day a week that you could be on, that I could promote, and we just do an Irvington update, maybe Mike, Eric Dixon, who just called in on the line, you, and maybe some other folks, we can get to call in and talk about some things. And then if we have to broaden it, to give it more time, we'll do that. But I'd like you to think about giving a commitment for a period of time once a week, so that we can kind of gather as a family on this platform and talk about the issues that are facing Irvington and then come up with ways to solve them.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate that.
All right, brother. I appreciate you, man. Stay in the fight. Stay up.
All right, appreciate it, man. Thanks again, Eric.
You're welcome. Bye now.
All right, bye.
Hey guys, now listen. We've got about 25 minutes, and I want to spend some time talking about the debate yesterday. Actually, before I do that, let me do my due diligence and play these commercials. We'll be right back.
Do you have loss prevention or safety concerns? Black Belt Security and Investigations has armed and unarmed guards that can protect what is important to you. For security you can count on, visit www.bbsillc.com or call 1-800-493-1859 today.
It's time to turn up the heat in your house or apartment. So here are some fire safety tips from Diane L. Murray Insurance Agency to keep you warm and safe this winter. Don't overload your electrical outlets. Keep flammable items away from fireplaces and space heaters. And put a fresh battery in your smoke detector. Turn to Diane L. Murray Insurance Agency for your home and renter's insurance, or bundle it with your auto insurance and save. Call 908-686-4609 or visit dlminsurance.com today.
BBSI. BBSI. BBSILLC.com.
There's only one way to be independent. There's only one way to be free. It's not something that someone gives to you. It's something that you take. Nobody can give you independence. Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it. If you can't take it, you don't deserve it. Nobody can give it to you. I'm for anybody who's for freedom. I'm for anybody who's for justice. I'm for anybody who's for equality. I'm not for anybody who tells me to sit around and wait for mine.
So, my analysis on the debate last night, and I got to tell you, I was like the level of energy that was just bubbling up inside of me, and the anticipation of what was going to occur reminded me of how I felt when Ali finally stepped in the ring with Joe Frazier. And because I said it, and it proved to be the case with Ali and Frazier, right? It took the two of them for both of them to be who they ultimately became. There would not be an Ali if there weren't a Joe Frazier, and Joe Frazier would not be if there weren't an Ali. And I think that in the end, there will not, you'll see through history that the movement that is occurring would not be what it is if the antithesis of what the problem is didn't reveal itself or himself on the stage yesterday. Like, you needed the yin and the yang. You needed the two sides. So you had the two sides yesterday. You had the oligarch, right, on the stage, in full display yesterday. And then you had the Democratic Socialists on the stage, unashamed, right, and pushing forward. The rest of them, they were there, but you had those two, right? And that is the dichotomy. That is the difference between the 99%. That is the difference between the 99% and the 1%. The only thing that was missing, the only person that was missing, was a true black voice that was speaking about the 13% that I'm talking about that is part of that 99%, which is the foundational black American, or the American descendant of slavery. If you had had that on the stage, right? If you would have had a black face with a black voice on there, like every time they talked about something, just kind of put on a black lens and say, okay, you talked about this thing, but now let's look at it through the lens of a foundational black American. So when you talk about wealth inequality, let's talk about wealth inequality from the perspective of a foundational black American. When you talk about the education gap, let's look at the education gap from the perspective of a foundational black American. That's the only thing that was missing. So they were kind of up here, right? But I would say that the fact that we didn't have a foundational black American or a black person who was speaking specifically to black issues on the stage has to do with us. Has to do with us, and specifically that we have not done the work, right, to elevate a person like that. That we have shown ourselves to be clout chasers, that we have shown ourselves to be more into the celebrity of a candidate than we are into the substance of a candidate, which is why a Kamala Harris and why a Cory Booker felt that they could try to do what they tried to do. Because they wouldn't have tried to do it if they didn't think that they could be successful. But Cory figured, you know what? I was in Newark. I know what Newark looks like. I know how Newarkers are. So that represents to me what black folks are. And so then he said, you know what? All you got to do is smile at black folks. All you got to do is take a selfie with black folks. All you got to do is make them feel important. And then if you do those things, they'll come out and vote for you. They'll support you. That's what he believed. That was the level of contempt he had based on the historical way that black folks have behaved during elections. So him being up on that stage was our fault. That was all our doing. So when we look and we shook our head at him, we should have looked in the mirror and shook our heads at ourselves. Kamala Harris, same situation. Now, thank goodness, enough reasonably minded black folks stood up and said, no, we're going to cancel you out. You're not going to be able to. But remember, there were black folks who were behind them. So they got some of them. And there was some in Newark who were caping for Corey, even though they knew, right? But thank goodness there were enough reasonably minded black folks who said, no, we're not going to do it. But that's the only thing that was missing from the stage yesterday, was that there was not that black voice that kind of cut through it all and said, yeah, we need to tear down this system. Yep, we understand that you're pointing at the oligarch. Yep, we understand the income disparity, all of those kinds of things. But outside of that, who here understands the plight of the black American? And then how we are specifically, with these plans you're talking about, what in those plans specifically is going to deal with that? So we haven't done that work. And because we haven't done the work, they didn't talk about it. So we shouldn't be offended. We should just go about the business of doing the work. But as you heard on the call earlier, we're not doing the work. Look at what's going on in Irvington. So you think that guy, you think those council people, you think that they're doing anything meaningful to fight for economic and political power? Do you think they're doing anything? Call it go.
Hey, I was just curious. What happened to Steyer? He wasn't on the stage last night.
He didn't make.
He didn't drop out the race.
No. Steyer didn't drop out. He just did not meet the qualifications to be on the stage. He wasn't willing to pay $300 million like Bloomberg did.
That's a sad fact. If that's, you know what I mean, and I do understand that that's how they do it. They have some qualifications, but you know, that also goes to show. Right, you know, that goes to show how this whole process is just, you know, it's out of whack. Like, so now you're saying that if you don't meet certain expenditure and donation requirements and so forth, you can't get on the stage and fight.
Well, so it's always been like that.
We missed the voice. We missed the voice for reparations. Right, last night we missed a guy that might have actually spoke on some black issues.
Right, but here's what I'm saying to you, Farrakhan. You're making a point that I've been making. So the only two people, like it or not, the only two people who were talking to in some semblance, well, three. There were three of them. There was Yang, right? There was Marianne Williamson, and there was Tom Steyer, who were talking in some shape or form about reparations, right? I mean, Marianne Williamson, she was full blown out there. She was like, look, she said there's a moral turbulence that can only be resolved through repairing black people. She said it out of her white mouth, right? So now I'm saying that the people who are on the stage, they're being represented. I mean, they're on the stage because folks who see that they're representing their interests are propelling them. Right? Through donations, through polling information. That's why they're all on the stage. So when we don't see somebody, and we had three, we don't see any of them on the stage anymore, right? That has to say something about us. It has to. And so now we didn't do the work. And so now we want the other people who are on the stage, who other people did the work to make sure that they're on the stage, we want them now to talk about our issues. when we had an opportunity to do the work. And that's what I was saying the other day. How much money did folks send to Marion Williamson to make sure she was on the stage? How much money and how much stuff did people do to make sure that Tom Steyer was on the stage? How much did they do to make sure that Yang was on the stage? Because all these other people are working. The LGBTQ community, corporate America, all of them are working to make sure Buttigieg is on the stage. You got folks working overtime to make sure that Elizabeth Warren stays on the stage. You got people working hard, including me, to make sure that Bernie Sanders stays on the stage. But I was also working to try to help Marion Williamson stay on the stage. I was also giving money to make sure Steyer stayed on the stage. I was also giving money and trying to help to make sure Yang stayed on the stage. Because I understood the importance, because I know how difficult it is. But you can't not do the work and then want somebody who you didn't do work for to fight for your issues. It's not going to happen. Never going to happen.
That's true. I'm not even going to argue that one with you, brother, because I think you're right. The only thing I'll say that for black folks, only thing I can say is maybe in defense of black people is being politically naive. And I think that that's a fair assessment for a large portion of the black electorate. We are politically naive. We don't really understand the mechanics and the nuances that go on in a political candidacy, right? In a political race. Like, we know it because they come to us and ask for our vote. They really weren't, politicians historically, they weren't particularly asking black people for their money. Right? They've always come to us and said they're going to give us. They've never said give to them. Right? That's not, they just don't, right? Probably because they understand we ain't got enough of it anyway, right? So when they come to us, they just ask for their vote, right? We've never been expected to finance the campaigns of the people in which we support. We just have been asked for their support. Now there's a lot of asking for support, mainly because of your guy, Bernie Sanders and maybe Elizabeth Warren, and the way they've raised money. Now they're coming to the smaller person for the money, right? That's become an issue, right? We're going to go to small individual donors. Whereas historically, blacks were always behind the main candidate who had all that corporate money and PAC money and so forth coming behind it. So we didn't know that wasn't part of our political strategy, per se. And again, I think the best way to put it is just to say politically naive in how the system actually works. Now they're trying to change it, which is going to mean that we are going to have to do something, right, that we weren't always doing. We always just voted. Right, we didn't think we had to send money to people's campaigns. People did it, of course, but that really wasn't what was asked of us previously. Right. The last, it's changing now. So I think you're right, and that's probably a message that needs to get pushed. I say by you and by everybody that if we're going to get the candidate we want, we're going to have to finance the candidate we want.
No, and you're 100% right, brother. And so. We have to do the work. And this is what I'm saying. But it has to start from the ground up, right? So you don't have, and it's a grassroots effort that has to occur. But when you have Farrakhan, and I'm just going to use these 4 towns, right? Because this is where probably a lot of our listeners come from. Tony Voss in Irvington, he's not trying to create a movement to educate black folks about financing with small donations candidates who have black voices. Right? Ras Baraka's not trying to do that. Ted Green's not trying to do that. Dwayne Warren's not trying to do that. They're all locked into the political establishment as it is, and they're living deliciously off of our misery. So they're not trying to free us. So when I say our only issue ought to be economic and political power, so when they come to you and they're asking you for their vote and they're asking you for support, you should be looking at their tentacles and seeing how their tentacles are feeding a system that is choking you to death. Choking you to death. They didn't come out to, see, here's a piece for you, right? None of them came out and said, hey, black community, guess who's speaking to your issues? Tom Steyer, guess who's speaking to your issues? Marion Williamson, guess who's speaking to some of your issues? Andrew Yang. They didn't do that, did they? They're all silent. So if we're saying that right now, this is the biggest election of our lifetime, you know when they're going to come out? They're going to come out after a nominee is chosen. Then they're going to ride the blue wave and tell you how important it is to vote in this election and how important it is to get rid of Donald Trump. But when they had the time during the primary to have courage, Farrakhan, and stand up and talk to you about the candidates who were there speaking to your goddamn issues, they were silent. Because they're not black faces with black voices. They're Democrats first who are living in a Democrat machine off of the backs of the people. We got to understand that that's...
You get no argument from me there. I'm going to sit back and listen, but you get no argument from me with that. You know what I'm saying? No, I mean, just real talk. Like, there's no argument to that. Again, but it goes back to what I said the other day. When we send our potentially... I'm not going to say that all our... I think the system corrupts our people greater. Everybody has a weakness. But I do believe that, like, whether it's Tony Voss or Ted Green or Raz Baraka, I do believe that when they got in the arena, they got in the arena with some good intentions. I do think that once they got in the system, and the system broke it down to them, like, look, this is how it works if you want to continue to stay in the system, and they want to stay in the system, that it corrupts them. And it makes them do less of what they probably even intended to do, as long as they can stay in. And I think that happens. I don't know how to fix it, you know what I'm saying? But I mean, it's obvious, right? That because I just can't. I have little hope in people that they did not get in strictly to line their pockets, to make power moves strictly for them. That they did actually want to improve these communities, which need it badly. It's just that when they get in there, they find out that the powers that be that's going to help them do anything are telling them what to do, and they become like puppets. And that's what seems to happen.
But understand, you heard, and thank goodness, and you know, and I appreciate Paul Inman, the East Ward councilman out of Irvington, but he laid it out, right? So when you, which is part of why I have a problem with these tickets and these teams, Farrakhan, right? So line A, right? What does that mean? It means before a candidate even, or before a politician even decides how he or she is going to vote if they win the election, you've already pledged allegiance to them. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's why, so they're team A all the way. And what does that mean? All the way to where? All the way to where? All the way to rubber stamping. All the way to the bank for them. All the way to the bank for them, Farrakhan. That's absolutely correct. And so when they get in a huddle and they say that they're a team, they're not a team for us. History has shown that. So when they win, right, they're a team for themselves. And we never get anything. And so now you had people in Irvington calling in, talking to you about how incestuous it is there. How they're just robbing from the community there. And the same thing's happening in Newark. The same thing happened in East Orange. The same thing is happening in Orange. When are we going to have enough? But you know what? We're sitting there saying, why isn't the 77-year-old white guy who's running for president talking to us about reparations? And he's saying, because it's going to be difficult, because you all don't know how to fight for yourselves. See, and so when he needs people in the Congress to be able to help pass whatever legislation he wants to push forward, he's saying, I don't have any evidence. I don't have any evidence that you're going to be there and be able to fight for yourselves. You haven't shown that. You've shown a severe level of political immaturity. And somebody has to elevate that in our community, right? Which is why we do this show. And so when people say, Eric, there's circular conversations, yes, they are. Because we got to keep going and going and going until there's an indicator.
It can only be circular, right? It can only be circular until there's a change, until it catches on, and we can start to create a new path.
Yes.
So it's going to be circular.
But you know what?
I mean, I say that all the time. I hear the show, I'm like, it's a circle, but I understand why, right? Because we haven't broken the cycle yet, right? You got to break it at some point, and we haven't done that. So we're just going to keep having it. We have so far to go.
How many people do you think are going to be? How many people do you believe are going to now be upset to take action in Irvington based on the information you just heard about 6 60 Stuyvesant Avenue, where you have the chairperson of the Democratic Party there in Irvington, who has part ownership in that building. You have the CFO, who has part ownership in that building. You have the mayor, who has office space in that building for his political campaign. They're renting out the first floor, right, that they did under the threshold of a bid contract, so they don't have to bid it out. All of that is happening. How many people do you think are now going to show up at a council meeting and say, oh, hell no? That's why I got to keep having the conversation.
5. I say 5. I give it 5 just to be on credit.
But it's going to be the same 5 that's been going already. It's not going to be any more. It's going to be the same 5. I mean, look at North. You see the same people. You see Munira. You see Donna Jackson. You see the same 4 or 5 people show up at those council meetings. You didn't see more people show up when they found out about the lead in the water?
Sure indeed.
You understand what I'm saying? And so now we're not willing to fight for ourselves. So this conversation about reparations is an immature conversation. It's a conversation based on emotion. It's a conversation based on financial need because a lot of people are hurting and they say, hey, listen, if I can get a come up through reparations, that'd be cool. But now you tell them to go out there and fight for it. You tell them to go vote for somebody for it. You say go and contribute to a campaign for it. You say go canvass and knock on some doors for it. You're going to hear crickets because it's difficult, because we are politically immature. And that's why we have to continue to have these conversations.
No doubt, no doubt.
So,
all right, I got to go. Let me cut and I'll be listening.
Thank you. So, listen, I think that Elizabeth Warren opened up a huge can of whoop ass. Now, what I'm gonna say is this: Bloomberg, and he was gonna crash and burn. I knew it, and I knew it because of the hubris that a guy who's worth $56 billion has. He has contempt for everybody. He believes he can buy his way, and he did, right onto the debate stage. So if you realize that you can spend $300 million and get an entire political organization, national organization, to change policy and get you on the debate stage, then you have no respect for them. He had no respect for the process. And so when people say, well, he didn't prepare. No, he didn't. He didn't think he needed to. He just figured, you know what? I hired some of the best ad agency people. They're putting out slick ads. They're doing that. I've been told how black people vote, and I've been told that black people are loyal to the Democratic Party, so I don't have to worry about them. Right? So that's who we saw on the stage. Somebody said it doesn't matter. And then what did he do? Right after the debate, he ran his next commercial. Because he still believes that black folks are politically immature and emotionalized. And at the end of the day, that guy who still hasn't come out, and I want you to understand this with my last 2 minutes. I'm gonna dissect the show, dissect the debate more tomorrow, because I got 2 minutes and I really gotta go because I got a meeting I gotta get to. But you haven't heard from Obama, but you heard from Obama. Let's say that again. You haven't heard from Obama, but you've heard from Obama. His silence is deafening. You didn't hear from him with Joe Biden, but you see him in commercials with Bloomberg. You didn't hear from Obama, but you heard from Obama. Because Obama wouldn't have been in those commercials with Bloomberg if he didn't give his permission for those videos to be used. How many videos do you think exist with Biden and Obama? Why were no commercials ever put out? You've heard from Obama, right? You know you heard from him. And you're going to hear more from him. Anyway, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Tomorrow I'm going to talk more about it. I'm going to talk about Elizabeth Warren's can of whoop ass that she opened up. I'm going to talk about the fact that Bernie Sanders is going to cruise through with huge numbers in Nevada. They're going to start playing it down now, trust me, because they don't want it to seem like it's such a big deal. So they're going to normalize it and make it seem like it's okay. And then they're going to start talking about Super Tuesday and South Carolina and how those are really important. That these first three, not so much. But what's going to really, really be important. See, Iowa was really, really important until Bernie won it. New Hampshire was really, really important until Bernie Sanders won it. Nevada, they said, oh, well, see, okay, he won those two, but Nevada's going to be a first state where you have diversity. Now he's drawn out a double-digit lead, and they're marginalizing Nevada now. They're going to continue to marginalize and try to get themselves to a broker convention. And you already heard what they said on the stage yesterday, right? Everybody but Bernie Sanders said that if you get to the broker convention, if you get to the convention, whoever has the most delegates should win. Nobody else agreed to that, which says to me what? It says that they're all going to probably try to stay in the race, even if Mike Bloomberg is funding them money under the table so that they can continue to split the vote, so that nobody has the necessary number of delegates when they get to the convention. And then you have the super delegates who make it a pure political process, pushing out what the voters want. Anyway, we'll talk more about it tomorrow. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I'm out.